People can trigger your anxiety not because you're weak or too safety, but because your nervous system is scanning for safety 24/7, and it has learned through experience who feels safe and who doesn't. So let's talk about why this happens, and more importantly, how you can protect your energy without guilt, shame, or explanation. Your body keeps the score. That phrase has stayed with me for years because it's more than a metaphor, it's truth. Our bodies are incredible historians. Long after we've convinced ourselves that we've moved on or that something wasn't a big deal, our nervous system holds on to the record. It stores the memory of raised voices, the sting of rejection, the way the air felt heavy in a room where love was supposed to be safe but wasn't. There's a thing, anxiety isn't always about the present moment. Most of the time, it's your body whispering or sometimes shouting, "I've been here before." You may not consciously remember every slight, every betrayal, or every moment you felt small, but your body does. It keeps a scorecard of safety and danger, connection and disconnection, and it scans every new interaction with that record in hand. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're sitting in a meeting and someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Your rational mind might say, "No big deal, people interrupt all the time." But your stomach twists. Your chest tightens. Why? Because maybe when you were growing up, you had a parent who dismissed your opinions. Or maybe in a past relationship, every time you spoke up, someone shut you down. Your body doesn't care if this is a new situation. It just knows it feels the same and it reacts to protect you. This is what scientists call neuroception, the way our nervous system automatically scans for cues of safety and threat, often before we're even aware of it. It's not weakness. It's not oversensitivity. It's biology. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do, keep you safe. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because sometimes we don't trust that body wisdom. We override it. We think, "I'm overreacting, I should just toughen up." But the truth is, your anxiety is often a message that something about this person or this environment doesn't align with safety. Ignoring that signal doesn't make it go away. It usually makes it louder. I remember working with someone who seemed perfectly charming on the surface. Everyone liked them, but every time I was around them, my body went into overdrive. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, that restless kind of energy that makes it impossible to focus. At first, I dismissed it. I told myself I was being unfair, or maybe I was just tired. But over time, patterns emerged. I started noticing how their charm was laced with subtle put-downs, how their compliments had sharp edges. My body noticed the danger long before my brain allowed me to name it. So when we talk about people who trigger anxiety instantly, it's important to honor the wisdom of your body. It's not betraying you, it's guiding you. The question isn't, how do I stop being so anxious? But what is my body trying to tell me about this person, this place, or this moment? And here's the shift. Instead of judging ourselves for that reaction, what if we listen to it with compassion? What if instead of shutting it down, we said, "Thank you, I hear you. I'm going to pay attention." Because that's the beginning of protecting your energy, not by ignoring what your body is screaming, but by honoring the score it has been keeping all along. Not every vibe is yours to carry, and I want us to pause on that because it's such an important truth. So often when we feel anxious around someone, our first instinct is to turn inward and blame ourselves. We think, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I just relax? Why am I so sensitive?" But what if instead we asked, "What's going on in this space that doesn't belong to me?" Because here's the reality. Some people walk into a room and carry with them a storm of energy. It might look like negativity, constant complaining, or that low hum of criticism that seems to hang in the air. Sometimes it shows up as intensity, always needing to dominate, always needing to be right. And sometimes it's even subtler, a kind of false positivity, a mask that feels off, because underneath it, you can sense resentment or judgment simmering. When you feel your chest tighten or your mind start racing around someone like that, it doesn't necessarily mean you're broken or fragile. It might just mean your body is reacting to their storm. And the mistake so many of us make is believing we have to take responsibility for that storm as if it's our job to calm it, to absorb it, to carry it. But here's the truth. That's not your job. You are not responsible for regulating someone else's chaos. You are responsible for protecting your own peace. Think about it this way. If someone walks into a room with muddy shoes and tracks dirt across the floor, you wouldn't look at the mess and think, what's wrong with me that the floor is dirty? You'd recognize that it came from them, not you. And yet, when it comes to emotions, we do this all the time. We see someone's anxiety, anger, or negativity spilling out, and we immediately internalize it as our own. Research on emotional contagion actually shows that emotions are contagious. We can catch them just like we catch a cold. If you spend time around people who are chronically stressed, bitter, or aggressive, your nervous system starts mirroring those states. And if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained, even though you didn't say much at all, that's exactly what's happening. You didn't just listen, you absorbed. And here's the thing, absorbing other people's energy doesn't make you more empathetic, it makes you depleted. It blurs the line between compassion and self-sacrifice. You can care deeply for someone without carrying their emotional load on your back. One of the most powerful shifts I've made in my own life is learning to silently remind myself, this is not mine. When I'm in a space where the energy feels heavy, I breathe and say those words internally, not mine. And it's not about disconnection, it's about clarity. It's about recognizing that their storm doesn't need to become my weather system. Here's the beautiful part. When you stop carrying what isn't yours, you actually show up with more authenticity, more groundedness, and more compassion. Because now your energy isn't tangled in their chaos. It's anchored in your own calm. So the next time you feel that sudden anxiety in the presence of someone else, pause. Ask yourself, is this really mine? Or am I just standing too close to their storm? Because not every vibe is yours to carry, and releasing that responsibility is one of the greatest acts of self-preservation you can practice. Familiar doesn't always mean safe. That one can be hard to swallow because most of us are wired to gravitate toward what feels familiar. We think, if I've seen this before, I know how to handle it, it must be okay. But the truth is, sometimes the people who trigger our anxiety the most do so precisely because they remind us of old wounds that never really healed. Here's how it works. Imagine you meet someone who constantly interrupts you, talks over you, and makes you feel invisible. On the surface, it might just seem like poor manners. But if deep down it feels unbearable, if your whole body tenses the moment their voice rises, it could be because that behavior echoes something from your past. Maybe you had a parent who never listened, or a teacher who dismissed your opinions, or a partner who shut you down every time you tried to speak your truth. Your nervous system recognizes the pattern instantly and anxiety floods in, not because you're overreacting, but because that familiarity isn't safe for you. This is where it gets tricky. Sometimes we confuse that familiarity for comfort. We mistake the predictable for the safe. I've seen this play out in relationships so many times. We stay connected to people who constantly criticize us, not because we enjoy the criticism, but because on some level it feels like home. It feels like the voices we grew up with. And when something feels like home, we're tempted to tolerate it, even when it hurts us. But here's the truth we have to face. Your body doesn't just respond to the present moment, it responds to echoes of the past. And until you name that pattern, you'll find yourself drawn back into dynamics that keep reactivating your anxiety. I remember sitting with someone once who said, I don't know why I always end up with friends who make me feel small. And as we talked, it became clear the very things she tolerated in her friendships were the same things she had normalized in her family growing up. The criticism, the dismissiveness, the constant need to prove her worth. It all felt familiar. And because it was familiar, she had learned to confuse it with belonging. But here's the difference. Belonging is when people accept you as you are. Familiarity is when your nervous system says, I know this script. One heals you, the other keeps you stuck. So when someone instantly triggers your anxiety, it's worth asking, do they remind me of someone who made me feel unsafe before? Because if the answer is yes, then what you're feeling isn't just about them. It's about unhealed chapters of your story resurfacing in the present moment. And that awareness is powerful because once you recognize the pattern, you can start making new choices. You can remind yourself, just because this feels familiar doesn't mean it's good for me. You can step back, set boundaries, and build relationships that are rooted in safety, not repetition. And maybe the most liberating part is this: you get to rewrite the script. Familiar doesn't have to dictate your future. The fact that someone feels like the past doesn't mean you're obligated to relive it. You get to choose a new way forward, one that honors your worth and protects your energy. Boundaries are not barriers, they're filters. And this is where so many of us get stuck because the word boundaries can feel harsh. We worry that setting limits makes us selfish, cold, or unkind. We think of boundaries as shutting people out, locking doors, or cutting ties. But in reality, boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about deciding what gets to come in and what doesn't. Think about a water filter. The filter doesn't stop the water from flowing. It just keeps the toxins out so that what you're left with is clean and safe to drink. That's exactly what boundaries do. They allow love, connection, and compassion to flow freely while filtering out the criticism, manipulation, and negativity that drain us. Without a filter, everything comes through: the good, the bad, and the toxic, and eventually you're left exhausted, resentful, and overwhelmed. And here's the truth. People who instantly trigger your anxiety often do so because your body is telling you this is not safe to let in. But instead of listening, we convince ourselves that the loving thing to do is to leave the door wide open. We give people access to parts of us they haven't earned. And then we wonder why our energy feels depleted. What I've learned is this: boundaries are actually one of the most loving acts we can practice. Because when I set a boundary, I'm not saying I don't care about you. I'm saying I care about myself and I care about this relationship enough to keep it healthy. Without boundaries, resentment builds. With boundaries, there's clarity, and clarity is kindness. Let me give you an example. Imagine a friend who constantly unloads their problems on you but never asks how you're doing. Every conversation leaves you feeling anxious and drained. Without boundaries, you absorb all of that and carry it home with you. But with boundaries, you can decide, I will listen and support you, but I also need space for my own well-being. I can't be your only source of relief. That's not shutting them out. It's filtering what's sustainable for you. And here's the part we don't always talk about. Boundaries don't require long explanations or justifications. They can be as simple as choosing not to answer every call, stepping back from a conversation when it feels overwhelming, or saying, I can't take this on right now. You don't owe anyone a 20-minute essay on why you need to protect your energy. Your peace is reason enough. Now, will some people push back when you set boundaries? Absolutely, especially if they've benefited from you having none. But the discomfort of their reaction is nothing compared to the cost of abandoning yourself. Every time you honor your boundary, you reinforce the truth that your well-being matters. So when someone triggers your anxiety instantly, remember, you have a filter. You get to choose what flows in and what doesn't. You don't have to build walls around your heart. You just have to make sure the gate is strong enough to protect what's sacred. Because boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping your soul safe enough to let the right people in. Grounding yourself is power, not escape. When anxiety shows up in the presence of certain people, our instinctive reaction is often to run, to shut down, or to freeze. That's our nervous system in survival mode. And while those reactions are perfectly natural, they don't always help us feel in control. Grounding, on the other hand, is a way of reclaiming your agency in the moment. It's saying to yourself, I may not be able to change this person, but I can choose how I show up here. The problem is, we sometimes confuse grounding with avoidance. We think that pausing, breathing, or creating a little distance means we're weak, that we're backing away from the challenge. But grounding isn't weakness. It's not running from the storm. It's anchoring yourself so the storm doesn't carry you away. Think about it like this. If you're standing on a boat during rough waves, your first instinct might be to panic, to flail your arms, to grab onto anything nearby. But the people who make it through those storms don't survive by flailing. They survive by planting their feet, lowering their center of gravity, and holding steady. That's what grounding does for us emotionally. It doesn't stop the waves, but it helps us ride them without losing ourselves. Here's the science behind it. When we feel anxious, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in, fight, flight, or freeze response. Our heart rate goes up, our breathing becomes shallow, and our thoughts start racing. Grounding practices like deep breathing, mindful pauses, or even something as simple as feeling your feet on the floor activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part that calms us down, restores balance, and tells the body, you're safe. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about reminding your body that you are in charge of your response, not the person triggering your anxiety. I've learned that sometimes the most powerful act of self-protection is as small as taking a step back. Literally, putting physical space between yourself and someone whose energy feels overwhelming. Or maybe it's excusing yourself from a conversation for a moment so you can breathe and reset. These aren't acts of escape. They're acts of grounding. They're small, intentional choices that keep you from being swallowed up by someone else's storm. And the more you practice grounding, the more resilient you become. You start to trust yourself in those moments when anxiety flares. Instead of spiraling into panic or self-blame, you can pause, breathe, and remind yourself. This isn't about controlling them. This is about calming me. That shift from trying to manage someone else's energy to reclaiming your own is transformational. Here's what I know. People will always bring different kinds of energy into our lives. Some will lift us up, others will weigh us down, and a few will trigger that instant anxiety that feels like a punch in the gut. But your power lies in how you respond. Grounding is how you protect your peace without hardening your heart. It's how you stay connected to yourself, even when the world around you feels unsteady. So the next time someone walks into your space and your body tenses, remember, you don't have to run and you don't have to fight. You can ground, you can anchor yourself in calm, protect your energy, and walk away knowing that power isn't about controlling others. Power is about how steady you can remain when everything else feels like a storm. So here's the heart of it. When someone instantly triggers your anxiety, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means your body is wise. It means your nervous system is paying attention, carrying the history of your lived experience and trying to keep you safe. What we've learned together is that not every anxious moment belongs to you. Sometimes it's your body remembering, sometimes it's you standing too close to someone else's storm, and sometimes it's a familiar pattern that feels like home but isn't safe. That's why protecting your energy matters. It's not about building walls, it's about filtering what comes in, grounding yourself when anxiety rises, and choosing relationships and spaces that honor your worth.